Welcome to another top 5 with Kris 05, guys. Today I'm gonna give you 5 of the best budget Hearthstone decks you can be taking to easy legend if you know how to play them. All of these are actual good meta decks, some of which are actually even top tier, like top legend material. And one of these decks is actually one of my favorite decks to play right now in the current meta, so they're not some just random pile of cards that are just cheap. No, they're actual meta decks with which you really could be climbing. All of these decks are under 5,000 dust, and they do contain some pretty important legendaries which you probably already have, or they're also free legendaries, so technically it's not even close to 5,000. So yeah, these are definitely gonna be very achievable for most of you. If you're serious about Hearthstone and enjoy what I'm doing, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can also hire me for some Hearthstone coaching, and you can be sure I'll do my best to make you a better Hearthstone player. Now, let's check out the decks. The first deck is gonna be Elemental Mage, which is still basically as strong as ever, and yeah, you can still climb some easy ranks with this one. It's a very simple deck to be playing with. Very cheap, the only legendary in here would be Saroon, and you don't have any epics, so everybody should be able to craft this one if they really want to be playing a good, cheap, top meta deck. Nowadays, Elemental Mage is not as strong as it used to be, mainly because Lamplighter got nerfed, and this one only runs a single copy of it, but you can still make some easy ranks, as long as you know how to play it, and it's really not that hard to do so. We have 3 good 1-drops, a single Tar Slime, and nowadays it's not super important to actually be curving out with the Elementals, because the only thing you want to be chaining Elementals for would be the Overflow Surgers, which a lot of the times you're going to be fine playing one less anyway. We have Flame Geysers, which are an excellent spell to be going face with after you've done some extra spell damage with the help of Saroon. We have Aqua Archivist, which is arguably the best minion in the deck because it allows you to drop things like turn-free Tainted Remnant, turn-free Saroon if you have the coin, that kind of deal. So it's super MVP. The Flame Revenant is another super heavy hitter for the deck, because tempoing this guy out and actually sticking on the board with it is going to help you gain massive stats on the board. We also have a couple of Rolling Stones, which you don't normally see in most Elemental Mages, but it does make a lot of sense, like turn 1 1-drop. Gives you a turn 2 free with Rush, which is super good, so you can actually be able to control the board better. The Shale Spiders help you with the card draw. The couple of Spontaneous, again, usually used when you get a bunch of damage from Saroon, but you can also be using both this and the Geyser to actually control the board. The Blazing Accretion is super MVP because they draw you a lot of cards, and you can also use these to discard things like Bombs, Plagues, all of that nasty stuff the opponent could be shuffling into you. So it's super effective at drawing you good cards while removing bad cards. Single copy of the Molten Rune, this one for sure you want to be using after Saroon, because you get the damage from it twice, so 99% you will be using it like that. The other 1% you're going to be using it when you're absolutely desperate for it. The Lamplighter is only 4 damage nowadays, so you can also use it just to control the board. The Overflow Surgers, you play these, and you don't expect them to live in most cases, but you still play this and basically force the opponent to spend their entire turn dealing with this one instead of actually being proactive themselves, and who knows, maybe the second Overflow Surger is gonna stick. The Unchained Gladiator draws you a card no matter what, and if you've played an Elemental or 2 the turn before, you're gonna draw even extra. So this guy is especially amazing after you've gotten Saroon out, so you can actually draw a lot of extra spell damage idiots. The Solar Flare is super strong in the Mirror matchup, because it's basically 0 mana clear the board. It's also amazing against other board-centric decks, so using this even without Saroon can be super effective for you. Tainted Remnant, a lot of damage on a very healthy body, which can also deal a lot of damage, so a very strong card. And lastly, yeah, we have Saroon, which if tempoed early is absolutely gonna carry the game for you. Matchup-wise, here's what the stats are showing. This one is slightly lower sample size. We can switch to this one, let's say, a lot more games with 1 extra Lamplighter, 1 extra Tar Slime instead of the Rolling Stones, and here we can see that the matchups are mostly going to be green for you, but things like Control Warriors are not going to be great. Some of the Shamans might be a problem. Psycho Rogue is a little bit on the negative. Everything else still pretty green. And as for the mulligan, you want to be curving out with the good 1-drops, obviously, and if you have 1-drops, you can definitely keep more expensive cards than that. Aqua Archivist or Flame Revenant can also be super good. The Shale Spider you would only keep if you already have a good 1-drop. Rolling Stone as well, only if you have a good 1-drop. Blazing Accretion can be amazing if you're curving into it. Saroon, I'd say you only hold on to if you already have Aqua Archivist, especially going first. And as for on the coin, again, you want to be trying to curve out. Aqua still MVP, Saroon even better here, and I'd say you could hold on to him even if you don't have the Aqua Archivist here, just because you have the coin. and the rest pretty much the same. We can see similar decks that are doing also pretty well, but they're not much more expensive than this. There's some variants that start running Mesdune the Fractured, which is an okay card, but I wouldn't be crafting this bad legendary just for this deck. Like, it's not making the deck that much better, it just makes it different if you ask me. A couple of Azurite Giants is something to consider. Nowadays they do definitely feel like a pretty good inclusion. Some people are running things like Incendious. But all around you can see that the best performers are very, very close to the budget variant, so it's not even a budget variant, it is basically the variant. These are just variations that some of them are just more expensive. So you definitely have pretty cheap options with Mage. On the number 2 spot we also have Secret Hunter. This is also a super good deck to be climbing with. It literally only has 2 legendaries. Wasn't Pozic free at one point? Even if it was, nowadays new players don't have him. Gorgonzormo is also MVP for everybody, so it's definitely worth having. And to be honest, you can play the deck without Gorgonzormo as well. And Leroy is a core card, so he's not really you don't really need to spend dust on it. So yeah, the deck is super cheap. And it's super good on the lower ranks as well. Wouldn't take this to top legend or anything like that, but you can definitely hit legend with this one because people really have a hard time playing against secrets, and you have plenty in this one. We have a bunch of bananas which work amazingly well, mainly with your Vicious Litter Spear, but you can also use them on things like Costume Singer so it can actually stick longer. And the Costume Singer is amazing for you because it thins out the deck, draws you all of your good secrets, and like I said, you have plenty. You could also be creative with the secrets you're running here. This particular variant runs a single of Bait and Switch, of Bargain Bin, Explosive Trap, Ice Trap, Rat Trap, and we also have a couple of hidden meanings because it's usually the best. We also have Sneaky Snakes to you tempo out in the early turns. Vicious, like I said, absolutely amazing and basically ensures you're gonna be very, very powerful in the early turns, because play this on 1 and follow up on turn 2 with a Bait and Switch, or honestly with a secret, like even Ice Trap. And the opponent is going to be shitting their pants trading into this thing, because honestly they should. If you have Bait and Switch and they trigger it with their face or something, it's game over. The Bait and Switch is mainly used like that, like it's super massive with this thing, but you can use it on right about anything. Bargain Bin is almost always going to be drawing you 2 cards, because you actually do run 2 weapons in this one, so that's usually what you don't draw, and that's usually what the opponent doesn't test for, so the Bargain Bin is pretty nice to give you cards. It's not the most amazing thing to be doing on turn 2, but if you don't have anything else, might as well. And let's not forget it's a secret, so it's not like even the opponent knows what you're playing. They would be playing around things like Hidden Meaning, Ice Trap, Bait and Switch, so even a measly Bargain Bin could force the opponent into a play they normally wouldn't do. Explosive Trap, pretty nice against those token decks, including even things like Elemental Mage, so it's pretty nice to have. The Hidden Meaning is pretty nice because it forces the opponent to play suboptimally with 1 mana less each turn, or face the consequences of a random free drop, and some of those can be pretty nasty. Ice Trap prevents the opponent from casting good stuff, like Ramp, like Removal, that kind of stuff. The Patchwork Bells is so much extra gas for you, and let's not forget it also gives you for 6 mana, you basically crack this open and you have access to Liak plus Huffer in the same turn, so that's basically 5 damage to the face. The Rat Trap is pretty nasty because again it forces the opponent to play suboptimally with 2 cards or less each turn. The Titan Forged, you could be smart with the Titan Forged and actually already cast a few secrets on the board and then cast Titan Forged, and that's gonna give you access to the other secrets you don't normally have right now. That way, if you're really missing, let's say, an Explosive Trap, maybe you play a Rat Trap and Ice Trap first, and after that roll the dice on Titan Force, and that's always going to show you Explosive, because there's a total of 6 Hunter Secrets in the standard meta right now, as far as I know. So you're always going to see the Explosive Trap. Gorgonzormo, he's pretty nice. He gives you that extra cheese potential, so even playing it as soon as 2 drops out of Gorgonzormo can be pretty massive, especially if you have a secret or 2 on the board, because the opponent's going to have a really hard time dealing with a bunch of those. So that's also pretty nice. The Observer of Mysteries, again, you could increase your odds of getting a secret you really want by playing a few of your other secrets beforehand. But let's not forget this guy also gives you Mage secrets, so you might not see the Hunter secret you really want. And this thing only lasts for a turn, so it's usually better to play this when you already are somewhat ahead on the board, so that the opponent can actually be forced to test for the secrets and actually trigger some of them. Whereas if you just tempo this guy on an empty board, the opponent is also probably just gonna not do much, just gonna pass, and you just gained a 2/2 on the board, I guess. The Camouflage Mount, extremely powerful again, comboed off with Vicious Slither Spear. It could also give you Wind Fury, but things like Reborn can also be super nasty because you also get a Camouflage free Chameleon after that, which also is going to have Reborn, so that's basically infinity amount of extra bodies later. So you are going to be able to chip away at the opponent. Pazik is also pretty nice because he's also basically the gift that keeps on giving. I know a lot of people underestimate how powerful Pazik is, but in a deck like yours, he's super good because not only is the opponent going to have to play around secrets, but also he's going to have to play around your Pazik because you get summon a couple of extra free frees or force the opponent to actually play useless free frees instead, and that's also pretty okay for you. So he's definitely pretty nice, but you can definitely play the deck without Pazik if you don't have him. Leroy, self-explanatory, just extra hover for you. You're trying to finish the game with this guy, you don't just tempo him out or something. You try to just save him for the lethal blow. The Mantle Shaper, extremely powerful because of the bunch of bananas, basically. You get to make these guys super cheap, like turn 3 0/0 Mantle Shapers can be game-breaking for sure. And lastly, we have a couple of Starstrung Bows, which it's tons of damage. It's basically 20 damage on a stick, and pretty cheap as well, because around turn 3, turn 4, this thing is going to cost around 3 or 4 mana, so pretty nice stats for the mana, and like we said, it's getting drawn through the help of Bargain Bin. Matchup-wise, here's what the stats are. Things like Taunt Druid are not going to be great, Hand Buff Pally, some of the Shamans, Elemental Mage a little bit on the negatives, Zarimi Priest, Dummy Warrior if you manage to find one. And only Mech Rogue is somewhat of a problem, so this is actually going to be pretty nice for you even against all of them rogues. Mulligan-wise, here's what the stats are. Going first, you want to be keeping your good 1-drops, obviously, but don't keep too many of them. Like, if you already have Vicious in costume, you definitely don't want to hold on to Sneaky Snakes. Hidden Meaning is your best secret, but honestly, if you have Vicious Slither Spear, you could keep things like Bait and Switch, like Ice Trap, stuff like that, so you can really cockblock the opponent nicely. If you have Vicious or Costume Singer, I'd say Bananas are also pretty keepable. And Gorgonzormu usually is always good, but that's about it when going first in most cases. I'd say you could keep Mantle Shaper if you already have a 1-drop plus Bananas, but in the other cases I think it's a bit too much wishful thinking. As for on the coin, here's what it goes again. Again, the 1-drops are great, the secrets, some of them at least. Mantle Shaper here is a lot more keepable, because with the coin and the extra card, you're definitely going to be dropping this guy as soon as turn 3 in most cases. But the rest looks pretty much the same. Can you make this deck better? Honestly, things like Product 9 do not make the deck better. I think the one I'm showing you has the higher win rate. Yeah, here's one with extra Bargain Bin instead of Pazik. Small-ish sample size, but still very strong. So if you don't have Pazik, you can definitely swap him for something else. Some people are also using Ziliax. Which Ziliax module would this be? I'm assuming the buffed up one. Yeah, Haywire +4. Plus at the start of your turn. So yeah, you definitely have options for Secret Hunter, and they're all dirt cheap. On the number 3 spot is the deck I said is actually one of my favorites right now, and this is the Egg Spell Token Hunter, which is, again, not running any legendaries aside from Ziliax, and let's face it, everybody should have a Ziliax for basically any deck you could be using a Ziliax. Again, this one only has a single legendary and a couple of epics, so very, very obtainable. And really fun to play. I really enjoyed this one. Even in the top legend meta, this deck is performing very nicely. And it's nice and quick, like you have some pretty nice aggressive tools. You only have a couple of 1-drops in here with Catch of the Day and Miracle Salesman, but the logic behind this is you have a couple of trusty fishing rods, so you want to be fishing these guys out that way. Awaken Tremors helps you with the extra idiots. Sneaky Snakes is pretty nice. Nice and tokeny for you. The extra terrestrial egg is super good, especially if you get the yell on it with the Yoddler. And same can be said for the Terrible Chef, but you're using the Yoddler on the egg itself, not the chef, because you don't want to be killing the egg, you want to be triggering it twice without actually killing it. We also have the locations, which are pretty good with things like RC Rampage. The Observer of Myths works really well, especially with things like Awaken Tremors, because this way with a couple of these you get above the board twice, but don't get baited into trying to buff this guy with things like Leok or Ziliax, because if you play this guy on Leok, he is not gonna buff the board, only Leok is. So be smart about the sequence in which you drop your idiots on the board. And same can be said for Ziliax. If this guy is already on 2 attack, playing the Ziliax, which is a free attack and buffs everything with +1, is gonna make this guy into a free attack first, and then it's gonna place on the board, so the Observer is not gonna trigger because he's already considered a free attack minion. Painted Canvassaur is pretty nice with all your beasts. The egg is not a beast, but the idiot that comes out of it is, so that can be nice. And also all of your rampages are beasts, the sneaky snakes, the catch of the day, the tremors, so you have plenty of things to buff up, including things from Patchwork Pals, which is also pretty nice. Just like in the Secret Hunter, you get to have a 5 damage Huffer for 4 mana later, so that can also be pretty powerful. A couple of kill commands, definitely don't sleep on these, they're super strong because by the time the opponent gets to stabilize with taunts, you usually have them dropped around 10 health, so having the extra reach from hand is super good. Terrible Chef, like I said, is a great thing to be using Yadler on the egg for him. The trusty fishing rod, fishes the catch of the day, would be your best bet, but Miracle Salesman is also ain't the worst. RC Rampage, you usually want to be playing these when you have at least 2, preferably 3 or 4 minions on the board, so you can actually get 12 worth of stats for only 4 mana. In some cases, it's even worth playing it for 5/5s if you expect the opponent to have 4 damage AoE. But in some cases, it's worth to even play this guy on empty boards. Like if you're against the Rogue, for instance, and the Rogue already spent both of their Fans of Knives, well, they don't have much any AoE left in them, so going wide with these and following up with Observer of Myths, Tremors, and a couple of Tremors, and suddenly you have a bunch of free ones ready to go mouth. And that could be huge, or you could follow up with Painted Canvassaur and make him into poisonous, that kind of deal. Single copy of Librarian here helps you silence things like Ankiliacs or other big taunts you don't want to deal with. The Yadler, like I said, the best case would be to verbally abuse your extraterrestrial egg, because those are gonna be extra damage on the board. And a funny little thing you could be doing is you could also have a Observer of Myths on the board and then Yadler, and Yadler is gonna buff the board, but also the extraterrestrial eggs are also gonna buff the board after they summon. At least one of them will, because it's still gonna be a 2 damage Myths into a 3 damage from the first and still 3 damage on the second, so they're gonna match their attack, so the second one is not gonna proc it, but still it could be a little bit of extra damage. And if push comes to shove, you could technically even use this guy on something like a Miracle Salesman. If you have nothing better to do, might as well get some tradables so you can get some card draw, because God knows this deck could suffer from a low hand size, so there's that. And last we have Ziliax, which is obviously going to be the +1 module, as any token deck would, so there's that. Matchup-wise, here's what we have. Asteroid Shaman might be a problem, and Corpse Skull Death Knight as well. Elemental Mage is on the red zone. Same can be said for Control Warrior, and that's about it for your questionable matchups. Everything else pretty good. And as for the mulligan, here's what we have. Going first, you want to be curving out nicely. You don't really want to be holding on to Catch of the Day, you would much rather get it through Trusty, but Miracle Salesman is fair game. The Egg is MVP, Observer of Myths is actually pretty decent in this one. Awakened Tremors against most matches could be good, but I wouldn't hold on to it against something like a Demon Hunter or like a Death Knight, that kind of deal. Terrible Chef is fine, the rest probably not so much, even though if you already have an extraterrestrial egg, you can definitely keep Yelling Yadler as well, even going first. As for going second, you could be keeping a little bit more expensive cards like RC Rampage for instance, but it's still not very high, you only do this if you already curve out into it. Yadler definitely great, even without having an egg, I'd say you could roll the dice and hold on to one. The Trusty is still amazing, and the rest looks similar. For similar decks, it's really this. Like, this one is basically something very different. It's still kind of the same thing, but I don't know, I really like this iteration of the deck, so I would say this one would be the better choice for you, so you can't really upgrade this one even if you had more dust. On the number 4 spot, we have Aggro Demon Hunter, which is still a super strong deck, still super quick, and definitely not very expensive too, because a lot of these legendaries are actually core. Like things like Kane is a core card, Metamorphosis is a core card, Ziliax everybody should have, and the only legendary you need to craft would be Arana, but if you're playing Demon Hunter, you probably want to craft her anyway. Other than that, the rest is commons and rares, so like I said, it's very accessible for most, and the skill cap for this one is not that high, even though you do need to know what you're doing with this one to make the most damage out of it. Because if you start respecting the opponent's stuff instead of really squeezing all of the damage you can to the opponent's face, you won't climb too high with this one. We have a couple of Rufello and Flames in here, and they're great to make your Battle Fiend and Sock Puppet bigger and harder to deal with, and also you could be using them to remove things for the opponent. It's also a nice 0 spell to activate things like Par's Desperado, so all around it is a very good card. Acupuncture, amazing finisher for you. You can also use it to self-inflict damage on yourself so that Hot Coals procs twice, and it would be extremely powerful on turn 7. Like Ethereal, Acupuncture for 5, and Hot Coals for 5 damage AoE, which also goes to the opponent's face, is very, very hard to deal with. And you could also do something like, on an empty board, Arana into Acupuncture is basically guaranteed 8 damage to the opponent's face. But it's not always guaranteed. Like if the opponent does have stuff on there, it's gonna go to a random enemy. It could go phase, but it could go into something else as well. The Battle Fiends and the Sock Puppets are super strong, and with the Battle Fiend you want to be attacking first, but with the Sock Puppet you might not want to attack first if you have the last charge on your weapon, let's say. In that case, you would rather attack with the Sock first before you lose that one extra attack, and then swing with the weapon, so be smart about it. Don't forget you want to attack first for this guy though. And this guy combos off extremely well with the going down swinging card, but this variant does not run it because it's not a free card. But honestly, it doesn't make the deck that much worse. It's questionably actually making it better in some cases. We also have a Burning Heart in here. You can use this to damage the opponent's minion, preferably, so you can get the extra damage, and this works extremely well with the Sock Puppet, because that basically gives you 6 damage for that turn. The Headhunt is pretty decent, it can go straight up face, and those 4/4 crewmates are not the worst thing in the world, because you could also give them +1/+1 and rush with True Fellow in Flames, and in some cases that can be super good. The Sock Puppet's absolutely MVP. Like if you get this guy on turn 1 with the Battle Fiend as well, it's usually game over for the opponent because they can't handle it with him too early. A couple of Chaos Strikes help you with the card draw and also make your Sock Puppets bigger. The Par's Desperado is super good as well. Just don't forget you want to be casting a spell before playing this guy so you can actually get that extra damage, and this again is basically 6 damage if you have Sock Puppet on. So Sock Puppet into Fellow in Flame into Par's Desperado is very, very hard to deal for most. We also have a couple of Pocket Sands. It's nice extra damage for the opponent's face. Don't worry about quick drawing it too much. It's nice when you do it, but it's not in here for the quick draw aspect. It's here for the damage aspect mainly. We also have a couple of quick picks for the card draw to keep on going. The Spirit of the Team works super well with Sock Puppet again, and it's gonna be at least 4 damage for you because it is gonna stick for a turn because it has stealth usually. The opponent won't be able to handle it during that turn. And it's also nice because the opponent's gonna have to spend resources killing this thing instead of your other important stuff, so that can also be huge. We have a couple of Ethereal Oracles, like in any deck nowadays. You just want that extra cycle, and you do have some decent uses with it, like Acupuncture deals more damage, Burning Heart deals more damage, not gives more attack though. Headhunt deals more damage, Pocket Sand as well, and also Hot Coals deals more damage twice. And obviously you do want to get the extra card draw, because your deck runs a lot of cheap stuff, so you could get out of steam pretty quickly. The Hot Coals is your only AoE in here, and it also goes face, so that's pretty nice. The Cane negates the opponent's taunt, so even if they somehow reach their Unkiliak's turn, they're still not safe, because Cane would like to know their location. Metamorphosis is super strong. It's basically 10 damage on a stick, and you could actually use your normal hero power first, then Metamorphosis, and use the second hero power the same turn. That way you get to cycle a little bit of extra damage as well. And on the last couple of spots we have Ziliax. This is going to be the Haywire module plus the power module, so you can definitely stick a ton of damage with this guy. And lastly we obviously have Arana. She's super powerful with Acupuncture, like I said, but you can also use her as a tempo minion. Like on turn 6, you just play her, hero power into something big like an 8/8, and that's either gonna kill the 8/8 or go face if that's the only minion. So it's basically a win-win for you. Matchup-wise, this particular deck does not have that much stats. Let's switch to something a bit more populated. And here's the Gorgonzormu list, which honestly, maybe I should have showed you this one to be fair, but it does make it a little bit more expensive, so there's that. Just remove 1 Pocket Sand and slap in the Gorgonzormu, which you definitely should be having anyway. It was a part of a mini set, wasn't it? So definitely very obtainable. And in this one, we can see that bad matchups would be Handbuff Pally, Tourist Pally, Supernova Mage if you manage to find those. Rainbow Death Knight is on the negative, and Control Warrior a little bit on the negative as well, but honestly it's not that bad as people think. I'm gonna use this one for Mulligan as well, and I'm honestly gonna leave this as the code, because Gorgonzormu is a card everybody really should have, so really can't consider it a non-budget friendly option. And here's what it looks like going first. You obviously always are going to want your good 1-drops. The Spirit or the Quick Pick could be amazing. Gorgonzorm on curve is also pretty nice, same can be said for Ziliax. Harsh Desperado I would keep if I already have a Sock Puppet, I'd say. And I would definitely keep if I had Through Fell and Flame and another 1-drop like Battle Fiend. So it is not always going to be a keep, but when it is, it would be massive. Chaos Strike I would only keep if I already have Sock Puppet, honestly. And that's about it for when going first. As for on second, again, the 1-drops, the Spirit and the Quick Picker MVP, same for Gorgonzormo and Ziliax, it's literally the same thing. And here Parch Desperado is a lot more keepable because with the coin you're always going to have a way to get this guy down on turn 2 with the effect, so that can be super strong. For similar decks, like I said, there are variants with going down swinging, but they're not better. This deck has a pretty nice win rate as is. Like, this is the one I was showing you without Gorgonzormo, 58. With Gorgonzormo it turned to 59, I think. It's actually lower. It's actually better to be running the Pocket Sands, but this is a lot bigger sample size. The other one is only 300 games, so take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, it's definitely one of the best iterations of the deck right now. This one does have Going Down Swinging and Pocket Sand instead of Chaos Strike. That doesn't sound right, but Going Down Swinging is definitely a card you could include in the deck and feel good about it. Other versions could be running things like Sing Along Buddy, but they're not straying away too far from the one I'm showing you, so choose accordingly. Definitely do not craft Going Down Swinging for this deck though, because it is rotating to Wild in a few months. And on the last spot, we honestly have one of the best, if not the best deck in the meta right now, albeit it's not a very easy deck to climb with if you are not accustomed to this deck's shenanigans, but Cyclo Rogue is actually super cheap. Cyclo Rogue is super cheap. The only legendary you need to craft here would be Incendius, and he's a no-brainer anyway, so the other one would be Talnos, and you already need to have that one. And I think the best variants do run Ceaseless Expanse, so if you are serious about the game, you definitely also want to have Ceaseless Expanse as the most popular legendary from the game right now, not only from the new set, but from the entire game. So it's definitely worth having, but yeah, right now Cyclo Rogue is absolutely broken. You can definitely check out my guide about this deck. I'm still gonna go over the cards real quick, but if you want to really learn about it, check out my latest guide with it from a few days ago. And right now, this deck is super strong, mainly because it is shit. Like, this card honestly should have been nerfed. As you saw, it's a part of basically almost all of the decks. It's just that strong. Drawing 2 cards, having a decent body, the spell damage, everything is just screaming nerf me now, Blizz, but they're like, nah fam, this is fine. Anyway, we have a couple of backstabs in here. It's a fine thing to be using to control the board, but it's also a great way to use it to spell burst as soon as turn 2 or 3 with the Ethereal Oracle. The prep can also be used like that, but it's also amazing to do things like turn 2 dubious purchases that way to draw a bunch. The Shadow Steps are absolutely broken, and the main thing you want to be using them for would be your Ethereal Oracles, but you can also use them on your Moonstone Maulers, which nowadays are a staple of the deck, because you need that little bit of extra damage. Depending on the matchup, you could use the Shadow Step even for your Glacial Shard. This one is teched out, so you can actually have a nice little edge against Weapon Rogues. You could also use the Shadow Step on things like Speaker Stomper if you're against the Mirror or Lionessa Pally, let's say. But in most cases, you want to be Shadow Stepping Ethereal Oracle so you can keep that card draw going. The Breakdances, however, you're mainly going to want to use them on your Playhouse Giants, because not only are you going to get an 8/8 on the board with Rush, you're also going to be able to play a 0-mana Giant again. But in some cases, you might want to use this as a third Shadow Step for you. Like, in some cases, you don't really care about the Playhouse Giants as much. So there's that too. Dig for Treasure, you don't have any pirates in this one, so you're only running this so you can effectively get your Ethereals on time, your Giants on time, that kind of deal. We also have Gear Shift, which draws you a lot of cards. Basically discounts your Giants by 3, so it's an amazing thing to do even as soon as turn 1 if nothing really is that important to you in your hand. The Glacial Shard is in here mainly for Weapon Rogue, so if you're not seeing too many of those, you can definitely remove this guy for Ceaseless Expanse. We also have a couple of Tarslicks, which combo off extremely well with things like Fan and Knives for you. You could also go face with this thing, so don't sleep on that option. We have Talnos in here for the spell damage, but you can also use him for card draw, and the spell damage is super strong in this deck because it does amplify your damage from your asteroids from your incendious eruptions, so it's definitely pretty decent. The Fan of Knives, if you're not against a tokeny deck, you could just use it to cycle through your deck for the card draw. The Moonstone Mauler is somewhat of a win condition, but it's also a great way for you to cycle through your deck faster, because if you draw an asteroid, that does discount your giant by 1, and you also draw a card after that, so that discounts the giant by 2. So you could definitely tempo this guy as soon as turn 2 against some matchups. The quick picks are also super amazing with the card draw. The Ethereal Oracle, again, amazing to draw all of those spells. It's also super good after you've filled your deck with asteroids, with eruptions, that kind of deal, so you can actually amplify the damage and also somewhat reliably draw them out. The Dubious Purchases help you a lot with the card draw, and sometimes you don't even need to combo it. If the opponent didn't play anything meaningful, you could just play it as is, but it would be best if you play it for 2 mana after a prep. The Speaker Stomper, super amazing in the mirror matchup, because if you've noticed, you have a lot of spells. And it's also a tradable card, so in the early turns you could actually tradable this guy on turn 1 and discount your playhouse by 1. We also have Incendious in here. It's an amazing thing to be doing as soon as turn 6, because it gives you extra eruptions in the deck which you can fish out. And it also actually helps you land the Moonstone Mauler damage easier, because the eruptions are going to clear the board preferably. And lastly, we have the Playhouse Giants, and if you're good with the deck, you should be able to drop these guys as soon as turn 5. Comboed off with a couple of Breakdances, that's going to be 32 damage on turn 5, which is why the deck is so damn busted. Matchup-wise, I'm going to go for the more popular deck with Ceaseless Expanse, because that is the optimal form. And we can see that some of the Death Knights are going to be an issue. Aggro Demon Hunters are a little bit too quick. Dungar Druid can also be a problem. Secret Hunter can be nasty. Some of the Warriors, and Taurus Pally is also a little bit on the negative, but like I said, Weapon Rogue would be the bane of you, so that's why that variant ran the Glacial Shard, so you can actually have a fighting chance against them. As for the mulligan, I'm gonna keep this one as well, and here's what it goes. Going first, the weapon is always MVP, Gear Shift, Dig for Treasure, Ethereal Oracle, super good, Moonstone is also nice in most cases, Prep comboed with Dubious can be great, Backstab comboed with Ethereal could be great, and honestly, even Shadow Step could be a keep with Ethereal, but keep in mind, if you Shadow Step on Ethereal expecting it to Spell Burst, it won't. The Spell Burst would trigger after the Shadow Step is resolved, so if this guy left the board, it's not gonna happen. If you Shadow Step another minion, it will happen, but it just doesn't work that way, so keep that in mind, it's a rookie mistake. And as for on the coin, again, most of the same stuff, so mulligan accordingly. Like I said, if you want to make the deck better, it's gonna be with the Ceaseless Expanse, so it's definitely a card worth having. It's not rotating, so craft it as soon as you can. It is gonna be worth it for you. And as you can see, some variants can also run things like Deafen instead of a Speaker Stomper. I guess if you're not facing Rogue after Rogue, the Deafen also makes some sense. But all around, the deck I showed you is very close to the optimal form. So that's gonna be it for this top 5 budget decks, guys. Hope this helps you hit Easy Legend on a budget in 2025. If you enjoyed the video and find what I'm doing helpful, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can hire for some Hearthstone coaching, and I'll do my best to make you a better Hearthstone player. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video.